You want to take this fill plug out, use a 3/8 extension, put it in there, and take that out first. Set that aside. Now we're going to remove the cover. There's these bolts you have to take out. Use a 13mm socket. Make sure you have a drain bucket underneath to catch the fluid. And if you just take the last bolt out just a little bit, leave a couple threads in. Be careful, get underneath here with a pry bar and just drain the fluid out. And take that bolt out and slide the cover off. I'm going to use a scraper and just try to get under this gasket. It is a reusable gasket if it's in good shape, if it looks like it's not crushed. If you can get under it, just try to pry it up a little bit. Might be able to clean it up. If it doesn't look like it's in good shape, you're going to have to replace it. Slide that off. Just going to clean up the back of the cover. There is a good amount of rust on here. I'm just going to use a die grinder with a not too abrasive pad. And now I can clean this up with some brake parts cleaner. Take the hubcap off, use a straight blade screwdriver. Just pop that off. Use a 19mm socket, take the lug nuts off. Pull the wheel off. Now I'm going to take the caliper off with the bracket, use a 18mm socket, and just take the bracket bolts off. Now grab the caliper and bracket, slide it off. You use a brake caliper hanger tool and hang the caliper so there's no tension on the brake hose. Take the rotor off. If it's stuck on, you want to take a hammer and just hammer in these locations. If it's still not coming off, there is 2 threaded holes. You can find some bolts that fit in those threaded holes. And as you push the bolts, it's going to pull the rotor off. Now we're going to need to turn the drive shaft, so you're going to need to make sure the vehicle's in neutral. Be careful if you're doing this on the ground. You want to make sure the car doesn't roll or anything. It would be ideal to have the front wheels off the ground as well. So with the car in neutral, I can turn this, and you want to get it to this point where this pin is right there, where you're going to be able to slide it out, and then you can pull this bolt out right here. Now I'm going to use an 8mm wrench, or if you have an 8mm socket that you can fit in there, you want to take that off. Loosen that bolt up. Now I can slide that out. And it may not come out completely, and that's okay. Just need to pull the pin out. Just like that, slide that out. And very carefully, I'm just going to twist this back a little bit, just so I can see the gears a little bit. You want to make sure those gears don't fall out. You don't want those to twist. As you turn it, just make sure the gears go with it. And that's just temporary so that I can see where the clips are. Now from the outside, I'm just going to push in on the axle. As I push in on the axle, you can see that it pushes the axle in, and there's the clip. Just use a magnet and pull that clip off, just like that. With that clip off, make sure you don't rotate the axle at this point, and just slide it straight out. And it comes right out. When pulling the axle out, it is a good idea to replace the axle seal while you're doing this. You want to pry this out with a pry bar, and then put the new seal on and hammer it on with a seal installer or even a block of wood. Now we're going to slide the parking shoes off. Just slide that down, and we'll take that clip out. Use an 8mm socket to take this screw out. Slide that off, and slide the shoe off. Slide it out, and pull it off. Just so we don't lose them, we're going to pull the adjusters out for the parking brake. There's a little pin right here. You want to pull that out. Pull that pin out. We'll just keep that in there. Some grease holding that in. And this end, let's slide this out. There's a little clip. Just hang on to that. Set that aside. And the parking brake cable, just slide this out. And we'll take this off the bracket right here. And just take some pliers, and you just want to squeeze these little tabs. And then slide that cable through there. Might have to pull this a little bit. If you pull that, there is a slot. Go through that slot, set that aside. Now we'll take these 4 bolts out. Use a 18mm socket. And just take a hammer, give it a couple taps. It comes off, and here's the shield. You're gonna have to take that off. Normally this comes off with that plate, but this one's severely rusted. Now I'm going to clean up some of the rust just using a die grinder. Just be careful, don't take off too much material. Take the bracket, we'll flip it upside down. There is this rubber boot right here. It's recommended that you replace that boot if you can. That lines up just like that. Then take the new shield. Only goes on one way. This goes over here. That lined up, just like that. And that kind of crushes that rubber boot right there. We'll flip it over and take the block of wood. And we'll just slide it right there just to protect it. And there's a tab right here and a tab right here. Just take a punch and a hammer. Just bend over that tab. Same with this tab. There you go. And slide this back over. Take the bolts, get those lined up. Now I'm going to torque these bolts to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to reattach the parking brake cable. Just got to spread this out and then slide it through that bracket right there. Make sure those tabs are locked in. Now this bracket is going to go through where that boot is. And that's going to sit just like that. It should be almost touching right there. Now I'll put the adjuster in. This little metal piece goes in first. And the adjuster side goes on this side. And then the pin is on this side. You can put some grease on there. Slide that in. That should go just like that. Now we'll put the shoe on. Be careful, don't pinch your fingers. Just try to slide this on. You can slide this on like this and then rotate it. Spread that down and we'll rotate it down. It's just easier to do this without the axle on. You can still do it if you put the axle on first. Then put the clip in with the bolt. And tighten this down. And snug it down. That's good. Push this up just so it's a little bit more in the right location. You might have to make adjustments afterwards. Now slide the axle in. And then once it gets to that point, we're gonna have to tip the back side up because you have to slide it into the gears. Just rotate it back and forth a little bit. You don't want to rotate it too much because you'll mess up those spider gears. Push it in. Now install the clip retainer. That slides on, and then grab the axle and pull it out. And then that's going to secure that axle in there. Now carefully, we want to rotate this again without messing up the spider gears. So just rotate it enough so that we can push that pin in. With the pin with the hole in it, you want that to be at the base, and just slide this in. And you want the hole where the bolt's going to be able to go into it. And get the bolt started. And tighten that up. If you have the ability to put a torque wrench on that, you want to torque that to 27 foot-pounds. Do the best you can. Put the rotor on. If you have to make an adjustment for the parking brake, you can adjust right there where the adjuster is. Slide that on. That's good. Take the brake caliper off the hanger. With the pads separated, slide it over the rotor. Slide that on. Take the bolts, get those started. Now we'll torque these bolts to 148 foot-pounds. Put the wheel back on. And the lug nuts. Now I'm going to torque the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. Just go around again, double check. Take the hubcap. On the back side, you should be able to see where the valve stem is supposed to go. So line that up with the valve stem. Pop it back in place. Before we put the cover on, I just want to clean up this area a little bit. I'm just going to put a rag over the ring gear and just use a grinder. Just lightly grind any of the corrosion away. You can always use a scraper or even a razor blade. That's cleaned up. Just wipe it down with a rag and some brake parts cleaner. Now take the gasket, line that up on the back of the cover. I'll slide that in position. It only goes on one way. And get the bolt started. Now I'm going to torque the cover bolts to 18 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten it down evenly. You can always go back and double check, make sure it's good. Now you want to add the fluid. If you have a limited slip differential, you're going to want to add the limited slip additive. Some fluids actually contain the fluid, so you don't have to add it. And if you're in any doubt, it's always best just to add it just in case. It's not going to cause any damage. So just use a hose and a bottle, unless you have a special fluid transfer pump, and you can do that. Just add the fluid in the fill right here. Before you have the fluid level coming out of that hole, what you want to do for the actual level, it's supposed to be between 0 and 10 millimeters below that hole. It's kind of hard to check that. What you can do is take a wire tie and just bend it at a 90-degree bend, and use this as like a little dipstick. Go in there and check it. And you pull it out, you can see where the level is. It's like right there. And to measure that, use a 10-millimeter wrench. You can see 10 millimeters. So basically, you want the fluid level between there and the bottom of the fluid fill. So we're right there, so we're good. Put the fill plug in. It's good.